St. Lucia, this is Open Mic, and we now back to the fourth and final segment of our program. I've asked Junior a couple of times to give me a 90-minute program, but he hasn't given the nod, but I'm hoping that he will do that shortly when he sees for himself the kind of people that we have on our shows. So James, when we left off, we were talking about Liat, and because we have one more important subject to discuss after Liat, so we wouldn't dwell too long on it, but I would like you to complete what you said.
I advocate the policy of open skies and competition. When I took over in the Grenadines, we had two ferries operating, one between St. Vincent and Bequia, and another one between St. Vincent, Bequia, Canouan, Myro, and Union Island. I privatized, government was losing money, subsidizing the service. I told them that in 2 months I am closing down the subsidy. You all must go and get boats. Today there are 8 boats going in the Grenadines with private sector competition. Now, the Caribbean government's doing all this kind of predatory pricing. If anybody, the private sector wants to come in, and then they said the private sector is always failing in the operation of airlines because the government is maintaining its subsidy and its exclusivity. My conclusion, Michael, is this. The government of Barbados, if a new airline wants to come from South Africa or from Timbuktu to Barbados tomorrow, they'll be approved the next day. If anybody wants to go to Trinidad from anywhere, in other words, the governments operate open skies to the rest of the world, but they're not operating open skies among us. If you have trouble with a Trinidad line coming here to go to Barbados, or going from St. Vincent to Barbados, but Barbados is not going to restrict anybody, any airline in the States. If another 20 airlines in the States want to go to Barbados or from Canada, they come in. Yeah. But if you try to go from St. Lucia, St. Vincent to Barbados, oh no.
Clamp you.
They stop you. Yeah. You see? In other words, and this is the kind of Caribbean that we say we're developing, you know? Freedom of movement. Yeah. Freedom of movement of people is the freedom of movement of money. That's and right. It's the meaning of growth.
Right, right. Well, Sir James, this has been quite interesting, and I now want to touch on one of your pet subjects, which is the CLICO affair.
The CLICO affair, I am aware, it has bankrupted the middle class of the Eastern Caribbean.
Wow.
I say so unambiguously. When Cable and Wireless was doing its restructuring, a lot of people I know got their redundancy payments and put it all in CLICO. I know a poor fella in Bequia who was friendly with a rich lady. She left him a house. He couldn't live in the house, so he thought it would be easier. He sold the house and put every cent in CLICO, and now he is cleaning the street for $5 a day, sweeping in front of a little pizzeria.
Wow.
You know, I know surgeons, I know people who have put lots of money into CLICO. Now, I blame the central bank, and I blame Dwight Venner. So Dwight Venner as he is. Sir Dwight Venner nominated for a knighthood by me to the Queen. It is Sir John Compton and I who put him there. You know? And he boasts that he has been, and he is, the longest serving central bank governor in the world. As though we're so short of talent in the Caribbean that we can't find anybody else to replace him, you know? And they put more and more restrictions in the operations on the banks by the central bank. And Dwight has just sat there, and they were saying that the central bank had no authority over
CLICO.
Insurance business, and CLICO and insurance. Okay. But the CLICO was offering, and British American were offering certificates of deposits in these islands.
Which is tantamount to a bank.
And people went, which is banking? So don't tell me that the central bank, and what is more, You want to tell me these millions moving from these Eastern Caribbean islands to Trinidad that the central bank didn't know? Come on, I've been there. Don't try that with me. You know every day. Why do they have the agencies in every one of these islands? They would see the amount of transfers every day. And they should have been aware of all of that. But no, wash your hands of that. Central bank hands clean. As far as I'm concerned, the central bank failed us. And I don't know what the pussyfooting with down there in Trinidad. They say they have the money, they can pay us. The properties that they invested in Puerto Rico have gone up in value again because the Brazilian money is pouring into Miami. And those things are worth, and they have a lot of resources in Trinidad. And the people who have invested in CLECO deserves a response out of the government of Trinidad, and it should be a top priority of the government, and it should be a top priority of the successor of Dwight Venner. I hope he enjoys his retirement.
Right. Sir James, you have touched on the CLECO affair. What is your prognosis for the future of the Caribbean? On a final note.
Well, I don't know. Since there's so many things.
Well, can I rephrase that question slightly? Because the future of the Caribbean will depend a lot on the world economy. Where do you see the world economy today?
Listen. Look at, it's a big question, it's a tall question.
Sure.
I can't deal with that in any brush, but I'll give you a few examples. Do the people of the Caribbean watch and see what's happening with Greece as a result of overpayment of civil servants over the years? What lesson do the governments and the people get from that? What lessons do the civil servants in the Caribbean get from the experience of Greece? In Greece, you know, if a father dies and his fourth daughter is not yet married, she inherits the pension, you know.
Yeah. But so, James, you know,
so those are the kinds of things.
Yeah.
Now, but the other point is this. We have to manage our affairs aware of all of that is going on. We can't just blame it because wherever there are problems, there are opportunities.
That's true.
And you have to find the way forward with that kind of thing. But we have got to make sure, you know, we got to have quality leadership and people who understand what's going on in the world, and people who have some good experience, and people who are well read. And you know, one of the problems of the Caribbean, the leaders don't read, you know.
Yeah.
They don't pick up a book. They have not bought a book since they left school. I wonder how many St. Lucians have a copy of Derek Walcott's book in their house.
That is a very good question. But I want to say one thing to you. So it's a pet subject of mine, because you and I are on the same wavelength. You cannot be spending more than you're receiving. You're going to end into trouble. Right. I have looked, and you've been a prime minister. We spend approximately $16 million a year on embassies abroad. And in my view, they have been non-productive for the last 20 years. I'm saying to the various governments, instead of having these individuals and spending that kind of money, why don't we have what you call honorary councils? You have intelligence and Lucians living in the various islands, in various countries. They have a home. They know their way around. You take an individual, when the government gets into power, as they say, job for the boys, and you plant some person into an office, and they are not productive. I'll give you an example. I lived in New York for 13 years, and I remember Charles Fleming, who was a very bright guy under the Sir John Compton government, was representing the UN. And he used to call me regularly to come and fire one with him because he had nothing to do. Okay? Fire one. Okay. So I'm saying that one has to be disciplined. We've been paying out this money for the last 40 years. Why don't we take this money, whatever it is, you put into a special account and re-energize our development bank, which is what Sir John had done. When the United Workers' Party came back, I think they started again, but it's floundering because it's insufficient money. And that is one way of putting some money back into this project to get it going. Because really and truly, with technology today, we have Skype. I'm saying, if the Prime Minister wants, or any Prime Minister for that matter, wants to have a discussion with somebody abroad, you can arrange it. There's a screen in his office, and a Prime Minister will be talking to an investor. Instead of us leaving here, going to London, paying £400-500 a day for a hotel, as you rightly point out, coming from St. Vincent, what it's costing, you can imagine what it costs to go to London by the time you come back. And you're away from your job anyway, which is what you're being paid to do. So, you being a Prime Minister, we have to learn from our mistakes. How do you view what I'm saying? Does it make any sense?
I sympathize with your point of view, but I'll go one step further. One of the unfinished business in these islands is political union. It's a subject that each succeeding generation of St. Lucian and Vincentians and Grenadians will have to come back to. Why can't we be one country? We're fighting to say we're independent, and we're going up there in New York and with this and this, representing each of us 100,000 people. You know? And they use the argument of saying like, oh, Spain now wants to see these countries want to split up and all of that. When Sir John and I were trying to bring these islands together in Eugenia, you know, they were saying, but Europe is, you know, going apart, and Russia is falling apart. Russia is falling apart. Each section has a section, you know, 25 million people is no longer these big numbers, but they're splitting apart with several million population still. We have to bring these islands together if we are going to make sense in the international community. Well, I remember Lester Bode telling me when he go to China, he can't say he got less than 100,000 people. He has to talk about the Eastern Caribbean. And every now and again, everybody has to talk to say they represent more, so they get somebody to listen to them. You know?
Got you.
So, I think that is essentially what we have to come back to, whether you like it or not. These islands cannot survive. We tend to think from election to election, but countries are forever. Jesus Christ, St. Lucia being here for a few million years, hundreds of millions of years. Whether you believe in volcanic evolution or whether Christianity and you believe in creation like Genesis and so on, these islands been around for millions of years. Would the people, the ones that are going to come for 16 and 20 or 90 years? You know? We got to understand these islands are forever beside each other, and we got to find a way to bring the islands together. I'll give you a joke. When I first went up to represent St. Vincent, and I addressed the United Nations, we had an office up there. All the Vincentians come to greet me. And the ambassador produced a champagne. And he produced some plastic glasses. I said, listen, you tell me I now come all the way, all my long curriculum, I finally reached to address the United Nations, and you serving me champagne in a plastic glass? Man, go and buy some glasses. Then the next thing they tell me I want to go to the washroom, tell me I got to keep, we sharing a toilet. I said, listen, you want to tell me we representing, we facing the rest of the world and can't even rent a toilet in New York? Come on. What you say makes a lot of sense. But the point is, if you start out with the definition that you're independent, therefore independence made ambassador. In other words, we keep looking at what is proof of independence, but in the meantime we broke.
So James, we have 4 individuals in St. Lucia who earn nothing. They are consul generals for Denmark, for Russia, for other places. And even the British embassy here in Central has been downgraded. Yeah. Right now, when you want to get a passport, you have to pay how many $100 to go to Jamaica. They have put everything. Big the United States, they have a consulate in Barbados. We have to fly there for a visa. And we must have an ambassador, each of us, you know, that we can ill afford. That doesn't make any sense. And another thing I noticed about those ambassadors, the people who represent us here, like for instance, Mexico, Brazil, France and so forth. I had to remind this administration and other administrations that they are not here as figureheads. They represent their country. They meet them once a year when it's their independence and they have a function for them. They're not using them to their capacity. So James, it has been wonderful talking to you. I've got a signal that my time is over. I think I'll have to bring you back specially for another meeting. St. Lucia, this is Open Mic. I want to say thanks for listening. It's a pleasure to be here today because I personally have learned a lot, and good night. This is Open Mic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. This is great.